In 1993, a journalist named Daniel Mercer was given exclusive access to the abandoned Hartwell Psychiatric Institute in rural Connecticut. He was supposed to write a single article, a human interest piece, about the history of mental health treatment in America. He arrived on a Monday morning with a camera, a notepad, and a tape recorder. He never filed the article. When police found him 3 days later, sitting in the middle of Ward 7, rocking back and forth, completely unresponsive, his camera was smashed, his notepad was destroyed, but his tape recorder was still running. What was on those tapes is why we're here today. The Hartwell Psychiatric Institute opened in 1921 in Ashford County, Connecticut. At its peak in the 1950s, it housed over 600 patients and employed a staff of nearly 200. From the outside, it looked almost like a university. Red brick Gothic buildings, manicured lawns, long tree-lined driveways. But what happened inside Hartwell over its 60-year history reads like a catalog of horrors that modern medicine would never permit. Patients were subjected to experimental insulin shock therapy, deliberately induced comas, sometimes for weeks at a time, ice bath treatments, prolonged isolation in what staff called the quiet rooms, windowless cells barely large enough to lie down in, and most infamously, a program of experimental psychosurgery conducted between 1954 and 1961 by the Institute's chief physician, Dr. Raymond Voss. Voss believed that certain forms of mental illness could be cured by physically altering the brain, not through careful surgery, through what he called corrective intervention. His techniques were improvised, brutal, and performed on patients who had, in many cases, been committed not because they were dangerous, but because their families didn't want them. Records from that era, many of which were sealed until 1989, show that at least 34 patients died under Voss's direct care. The actual number is believed to be far higher. Voss himself died of a stroke in 1963 and was never prosecuted. The program was quietly discontinued after his death, and Hartwell continued operating until 1989, when state funding cuts forced it to close permanently. The building has sat empty ever since, and if you ask the people of Ashford County about Hartwell, most of them will change the subject. Former staff members refused to enter the building after closure, not because of regulations, because of what they said they heard coming from Ward 7, even when the building was completely empty. Daniel Mercer was 34 years old in 1993. He worked for a mid-sized Connecticut newspaper called the Ashford Courier. By all accounts, he was a steady, rational, experienced reporter. His editor later described him as the last person you'd expect this to happen to. Daniel arrived at Hartwell at 9 a.m. on a Monday. He had a key provided by the county, permission from the building's state-appointed caretaker, and a planned itinerary. He would spend the morning photographing the exterior and ground floor, the afternoon in the administrative wing. Tuesday, he would cover the patient wards. Wednesday, his final day, he'd complete his notes and leave. He called his editor at noon on Monday. Everything was fine. The building was unsettling but manageable. He mentioned that the ground floor smelled strongly of disinfectant, strange for a building abandoned 4 years earlier. He mentioned it once and moved on. He called again at 6 p.m. His voice, his editor recalled, was slightly different, flatter. He said he had decided to stay overnight. He wanted to, quote, get a feel for the atmosphere after dark, unquote. His editor thought nothing of it. Daniel had done this before on other assignments. That was the last phone call anyone received from Daniel Mercer. On Wednesday afternoon, when he failed to check in, police were called. They found him in Ward 7 on the 3rd floor, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, eyes open, completely unresponsive, rocking very slightly. He was physically unharmed, no injuries, no signs of anyone else having been present. It took Daniel's tape recorder ran continuously from Monday morning until the batteries died sometime Wednesday. Investigators logged over 38 hours of audio. Most of it was mundane: footsteps, Daniel narrating his observations, the ambient sounds of an old decaying building. But starting from approximately 2:17 a.m. on Tuesday morning, things changed. At that timestamp, Daniel's narration stops mid-sentence. There is a long pause, around 40 seconds of silence. Then his voice returns, but different, quieter, and he begins describing what he is seeing in a way that makes investigators deeply uncomfortable. He describes people in the corridor outside Ward 7, patients in old-style hospital gowns, standing completely still, facing the wall, not moving. He counts them, 11 of them, and describes each one in detail: their approximate age, their build. In 2 cases, he even describes marks on their skin, what he calls surgical markings on the head. Here is what disturbed investigators most. They cross-referenced Daniel's descriptions, the ages, builds, and in particular those surgical markings, with the sealed patient records from Dr. Voss's program, records that Daniel Mercer had no access to and had never seen. 11 of his descriptions. The Hartwell Psychiatric Institute still stands today. Connecticut state records show it has changed ownership 3 times since 1993. Each time sold at a significant loss when the new owners decided not to proceed with redevelopment. None of the proposed renovation projects were ever started. In 2004, an urban exploration group, 3 young men in their 20s, entered the building illegally. 2 of them came back out within an hour. The 3rd was found 2 days later, sitting in the exact same spot in Ward 7 where Daniel Mercer had been found 11 years earlier. Same position, same unresponsive state. He recovered faster than Daniel. Within 2 days, he was talking. His account differed from Daniel's in the details, different descriptions, different numbers, but the core of what he described was the same. Something in Ward 7 that did not threaten, did not chase, did not harm. It simply showed. And once it started showing you, it became very, very hard to look away. The county finally voted in 2019 to demolish Hartwell. Construction crews were on site for 4 days before work was halted, officially due to unforeseen structural complications. Unofficially, multiple workers later told local media they had refused to continue after the 2nd day. When pressed for details, they gave answers that ranged from vague to nothing at all. As of today, the Hartwell Psychiatric Institute still stands. The demolition order is still technically active, and Ward 7 on the 3rd floor is still accessible, if you know how to get in. Nobody goes in anymore. Not twice. Daniel Mercer died in 2011. Heart failure at age 52. His family say that until the end of his life, he never once expressed regret about what happened at Hartwell. In fact, according to his daughter, he spoke about those 3 days more warmly than almost anything else in his life. She said, he always said it was the most important thing he ever did, even though he never told us exactly what it was. I've been thinking about that for a long time. The most common horror asks, what if something evil is waiting for you in the dark? But Hartwell asks something different, something harder. What if what's waiting for you in the dark just wants to be heard? And what if, once you started listening, you realized you couldn't justify stopping? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this story stayed with you, you know what to do. Subscribe, because next week, we go somewhere even darker.
Subscribe if you want to hear more true horror stories hidden across the world, because the next story is even darker.